the layers of 5 years ago is not the same that we are with the one that we are working right now. We can see a bigger layer, okay? We can see an increasing consumption of this type of layers. Probably 20 or 25 years ago, an average consumption was around 95, 100 grams probably, and it was very difficult to these layers to eat them. Right now, we can see an increment in the consumption of these layers.
Welcome to another episode of the Poultry Nutrition Blackbelt Podcast. I'm your host today, Kelly Walmsley, and I'm joined by Juan Espino. Hey Juan, how are you?
Hello, Kelly. It's a pleasure to be again with you, sharing with you this episode.
You've been on this podcast a couple times, and I've got to interview you once, and we got to meet in person very recently. So kind of full circle.
Yes. We met at Atlanta, the APP show.
That's right. I guess, so Juan, for our listeners out there, if you don't mind just to give your role, your current role, and then we'll kind of jump into the podcast.
Yeah, sure. My name is Juan Espino. I'm from Guatemala. I am the nutritionist and the feed manager of a plant here in Guatemala. And basically, I am in charge to do all the nutrition. With the field is in charge of producing feed for layers, broilers, and pigs. And, that is all my background.
So in your current role, I guess that kind of, talking about with formulation and your role on managing the feed, brings us into kind of the topic today. We want to talk about extended lay.
Well, I think extended lay, for layers, a very challenge way. Layers are facing long laying cycles, so it's becoming a very challenge. From a perspective view, the density of nutrients that are required for these type of layers, because 20 years ago, probably layers will only produce until they reach 80 weeks. And then right now we are expecting, or we have to extended production 20 more weeks. So we are expecting a production of 100 weeks in the age of this layer. So I think it's becoming a very challenging, from a nutrition perspective, the density of nutrients that are required right now for the production.
Kemen calls all poultry experts. You already know the key to a profitable operation is healthy, productive birds. Our team of poultry experts are driven by curiosity to develop science-backed ingredients and solutions that help you maintain feed and water quality, improve intestinal health, optimize nutrition, and eliminate pathogens. Learn more today by diving in at kemen.com/poultry to learn more.
Yeah, it's interesting because, me coming from the side of a broiler nutrition, but I do share an office wall with a great layer nutritionist that's also a co-host of this show. Shout out to Pratima Adhikari. And but I've served on some of her committees, and that's the interesting thing that I think, just kind of learning over the past 10 plus years that, we're going into this extended lay. That is, we don't need to molt anymore. And, so the bird is rapidly changing. And I think we were talking offline a little bit before this and talking about just the size of the bird and the demand on that bird. And kind of the things that we were talking about were, very reminiscent of what we talk about typically about broilers and just their demand for nutrient density. And so, but we need to be kind of applying that same kind of concept of thought into this extended lay with these birds, right?
Yeah, that is so true. We are dealing right now with a different, I can tell you that probably 2 or 5 years ago, that these long laying cycles or the layers of 5 years ago, is not the same that we are with the one that we are working right now. We can see a bigger layer, okay? We can see an increasing consumption of this type of layers. Probably 20 or 25 years ago, an average consumption was around 95, 100 grams probably, and it was very difficult to these layers to eat them. Right now, we can see an increment in the consumption of these layers. I mean that is working at the same time that we can see a different production. We can see these long, not only these long laying cycles, or extended laying cycles, but at the same time we have to keep or maintain that production, that persistency. I mean, we are facing a longer persistency in this type of layers. We can expect probably 35 or 40 weeks over the curve, with probably an 8 or 10% of persistency in this, compared to the guide of the genetic line of these layers. So, I mean, it's totally different. The layers that we are facing, they are very challenging. They're very challenging with the nutrition, I think. I don't really believe, because, I mean, I was telling you offline, we are in the business of the shells. We have to produce shells, because if you don't maintain that production of that shell, you're losing weight. And the metabolic pathway to produce a shell is very, very demandable for these layers. So in a way that you have to, right now, you have to start to consider an antioxidant nutrition for this type of layers. Or you can start facing problems with the shells after 60 weeks or 75 weeks, and you're losing that number of eggs in that cluster of the week. It's very important to mention that right now, probably 20 years ago, the cluster per week was close to six weeks per week, and right now this value is very close to seven eggs per week. So probably we can see a production close to 25 hours per egg for a layer. So I mean, it's a very demandable nutrition that we are facing with these new layers, and the genetic is changing every 2 or 3 years. So we have to start to consider different type of nutritions or density of nutrients to apply to these extended laying cycles.
You know, in the world of working with broilers and doing nutrient requirements, I mean, it's challenging work, but it's kind of, when you're thinking about being able to kind of move the needle, it's a little bit quicker, at least for a broiler as opposed to a layer. And so thinking about, you know, kind of what that kind of application and then applying it to layers, I mean, major respect for those of you that work with them, just because, I mean, they're alive for so long. And so thinking about, I guess, you know, phase feeding and nutrient density, I mean, do you think, I mean, things that have been successful for you, are you looking at adding another phase or changing the phase? And what kind of nutrients are you really targeting to really help her get through that late lay cycle?
On the production phases, for example, I like to start with a pre-lay phase. This pre-lay phase should be formulated with 50% less of calcium. It's just an adaptation phase for the future phase that are coming to feed this lay. It only takes around probably 2 weeks to feed this layer, this pre-laid diet. And the only consideration that you have to consider is the density or the consumption for this phase, and then the formulated with 50% less of calcium. Why? Because the layers are this type of animals that they are used to adapt to the feed, so you cannot do abrupt changes in the feed. If you do these abrupt changes, probably they are not going to respond good, or they are not going to work very well. So this pre-start layer should be considered with this type of density of calcium. Then you have a pre-starter diet. A pre-starter diet or pre-starter period of production. In this period, for example, layers achieve the 90% or the peak of the production. So something that happened in the layers in this period is that the uterus is growing in this period. So and something that you have to be aware is the consumption or the target consumption that we have to face feeding this type of layers. Probably a pre-starter production diet of 100 grams will be a perfect, or 95 grams will be perfect to feed this layer, because they are not mature. They are growing. The uterus is growing. So if these layers do not consume the diet, they are going to probably in the second phase of this period, they are going to lose weight, and it's something that we don't have to. That is not a fact that you have to start losing weight. If you start losing weight, you can see an autoconsumed layer, and that will be, and probably it will be equals like you are losing eggs 60 or 40 weeks later, for example. So in a way that you maintain the feed, and this animal is going to consume the feed correctly, then you will avoid an autoconsumption of this type of layers. Then after probably at the 30 weeks, you do a second change, and that will be the feed that these animals will maintain. Let's say in this way, the whole production, probably it will be 110, 150 or 120 grams per layer. So in a way that you do a density for this type of layers, for this type of consumption, then you're going to, let's say, to keep the weight. That is the most important. You are an expert in breeders, and something that I learned from breeders is that you have to maintain the weight of the female during production. If you don't maintain the weight, you start losing production in breeders. Well, the same happened with layers, and I import this information for the layer market. And something that I have been looking, for example, in layers, is that after the week of 60 week of age, layers start losing weight. And it's something that we have to avoid it. I mean, if we import information from breeders, we can see the same is happening with layers. So something that is very important, something that I've been doing in my experimental farm, is that we start using, for example, arginine as an amino acid. Of course, taking a very carefully with the application of arginine, especially because they use the same receptor or the same absorption channel with lysine. But it's something that I've been studying a lot, and something that I can tell you is that if you increase probably 3 or 4 points the ratio of arginine, we can maintain the weight of the layers, and that could be very helpful because it can help to maintain the persistency that is very important in this type of animals. Right now, remember that the persistency is the business for the company, and the shelf that is very important too. The metabolism of calcium and phosphorus is very demanding for these layers. So we have to start to consider, it's another application that we have to apply with layer nutrition, is that we have to start to consider an antioxidant nutrition strategy, for example, to avoid that oxidative metabolism of calcium and phosphorus in the layers. In a way that you start to implementing this type of strategy, probably you're going to see a persistency in the third period of production in this type of animals.
That concludes our episode today of the Poultry Nutrition Blackbelt Podcast. I'm your host, Kelly Walmsley, and Juan, thanks for joining us, and we'll hope to talk to you soon.
Yeah, sure. That will be a pleasure to share with you another episode.
Bye, everyone. We'll catch you next time.
Bye-bye.